Not every founder starts with a blank page. Some inherit a legacy and have to figure out what to keep, what to change, and what to let go. And that might be the harder version of the job. I'm Kandas Rodarte. This is Gratitude Geek. And today's guest built on 3 generations of family legacy and made it completely her own. Her name is Lesle Lane. Welcome, Lesle.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
I have to tell you that I have known people who are 3rd generation business owners, and it is not an easy job to maintain the legacy. 100 years ago, things are so different than they are now, and most 3rd, 4th generation companies are 100 years or more. So I'm so impressed that you've managed to not only keep it together, but actually adapt to today. So anyway, hi. Tell us your
Hi.
story. Tell us
Well,
your story.
I saw my mom last week, and we discussed that someone in our family has been taking pictures for 95 years this year. And so, you sit back and you're like, that is just incredible. And so I'm texting my brothers. I'm like, do you realize this? And so very fortunate to have that history like you're talking about, but also there's a lot of pressure there. And I was actually the last choice for who they wanted to take over their business.
Really?
Yeah, well, I am in commercial photography. So it is very different than portrait wedding. And back in the early 90s, there were really no women doing this. And so we do industrial photography, manufacturing photography, architectural interiors, things that require a lot of equipment, a lot of technical knowledge. And there really weren't any women doing it back then. And so my brothers were the first choice of who they wanted to take over the business. They wanted me to go do what girls do, and that's shoot weddings. And I just do not have the personality for that. So very fortunate. My grandfather started in the industry, actually worked with Olin Mills back when they were just beginning.
Wow.
Exactly. Settled down in Columbus, Georgia, and established a thriving portrait wedding business that my aunts took over. And then my mother moved to Indiana, where we joined my stepfather in his corporate photography business, and that's what I've taken over.
So is it a merger of the 2 businesses?
No, they were actually very separate because one was in Georgia and one was here. So even though I'm a 3rd generation photographer, it's not the same business. And I actually had it's not a straight line. I had some hiccups in there along the way, and so it's been quite the journey.
Mm. And photography has changed so much in 95 years. I mean,
Yes, it has.
film, I mean, even when film was the thing, different types of film came out. So you are constantly adapting, and now everybody and their brother can take photos with their cell phones. I'm sure that you're competing with that all the time. It's just but to continue to adapt and grow is phenomenal.
Yes, and I'm very fortunate that we are a family of pioneers. So when black and white film, that's what my grandfather started with, transitioned to color film, people don't think about the fact that you could process your own black and white film in your home, where when it changed to color film, it was a 6 or 7-step process that you could no longer do in your home. And so it put a lot of people out of business because they would not make that change due to the investment. Well, my parents jumped on it because my mom and my biological father actually started a color lab to support my grandparents' photography business. So
Wow.
they just jumped right in. And so when color film was transitioning to digital film, that was during my generation. And I should have been afraid, Candace, but I wasn't. And I also jumped in very early in that transition.
Something that is interesting to me is that you decided to create or to apply for a woman-owned certification for your business, and I'm just curious how that has benefited you.
Well, in the state of Indiana, a lot of the contracts are done through that certification. And so it's twofold. One, I wanted to be able to be a part of that, to really celebrate that not only am I a woman-owned business, but my mother worked in the business and my grandmother worked in the business. And so I stand on the shoulders of the women that have come before me. So I first of all wanted to celebrate that. Then I also wanted to be able to be considered more heavily because they do weigh in the state of Indiana as well as on a federal level, because I'm certified both ways, they do put some weight on how many women or certified organizations they have to have on a specific contract. So I have landed at some of the state schools here in Indiana, landed contracts that are because I am certified. I'm sure that my talent and qualifications are part of that as well, but it certainly is nice to know that I'm getting a chance where maybe other photographers would not get that opportunity.
So that's on the state level.
Yes.
Without getting into the politics, has the current anti-DEI push from the federal level affected any of the contracts that you've gone after?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Indiana is very well known to be a highly Republican state, and many of the federal things that have happened with DEI have fallen heavily on the state of Indiana, especially when you're talking about higher education, which is where I can really shine in the photography that I do. They are actually forbidding our higher education to use DEI in both their vendor selections as well as their applications for students. So yes, it is 100% impacted. I have not had to provide my certification since the latest administration has gone into office.
Does it make it harder for you to compete, or does it change the way that you are competing for these contracts?
It definitely changes the way that I'm competing for the contracts. I know that in this current climate, I am not going to promote that I am certified. It's on my website. Certainly, if somebody requests the information, I have it. But I feel like that just because of where we're at right now, I just keep my mouth shut and keep my head down.
Yeah. Isn't that unfortunate?
It
It's
is. It's
but
very unfortunate.
one of the ways that you promote yourself is to be loud and proud about who you are and where you stand on things, and if you're not able to hold your head up and say, "This is who I am and this is what my business represents," it does feel like you're minimizing your voice.
It does, but and again, we don't want to get too much in the weeds.
Yeah.
With everything going on with the administration right now, this is really a minor problem compared to what other people are experiencing.
Okay. Point taken. Point taken. So, something I ask every guest is, how do you weave gratitude into your business strategy?
Well, when you've been on your knees, there's no place to look but up. And I have had so many difficult moments, both in my life and in my career, that sitting where I am right now, I am filled with gratitude every single day, especially when I get jobs that are um, difficult. So after 33 years in the industry, I know how to do a lot. And so some of it's very simple, some of it's very repetitive. But then I get these projects, and this week I've had two of them where it's been difficult. It's required my skill set, and the client is just so happy with what I'm providing for them that it just builds me up with more and more gratitude. So I don't have any trouble at all weaving gratitude into it because I've been in the depths of despair before and I've been broke, both of which are very terrible places to be.
When you're at the rock bottom, it's really hard to find the gratitude, but after you look back, you can say, "Oh, these are all the things that are amazing that happened." So finding the gratitude when you are at rock bottom helps you get to the next, just helps you climb up. Climb up. The more you're
Absolutely.
grateful for, the more you have to be grateful for.
And I've had
S
wonderful people in my life that have helped me when I was on my knees.
Okay, let's talk about this, because there are so many people who say, "I'm a bootstrapper. I did it on my own. Nobody helped me." But in reality, that's not true. There is always somebody or something that helped you get. Every business has that somebody or something that helped them.
So my mother is not the most nurturing person in the world, and she will agree with me. And so she was the one that was strapping my boots on that said, "Get your ass up." And so I think that you have to accept that just because people aren't going, there, poor little Leslie, that she was there to say, you're gonna get up and I'm gonna stand here until you do. And sometimes, and that's who my mom is, and that's how she shows love. You have to accept and be grateful, even if the tactics aren't as smooth as you'd really like them to be. But yes,
Yeah,
somebody's always there holding your arms up.
and I bet you appreciate your mom a lot.
Beyond 85 years old, and that woman is still engaged in my business on a daily basis. I send her pictures that I'm like, "Look at what I did," and she's like, "Best photographer in the family."
Let's talk about what you didn't know was gonna happen. I mean, you're 3rd generation, so you would think that you would have known everything that was gonna happen in your business, but what surprised you? What just blindsided you?
Well, each generation has had a recession. So if you look at both my parents and my grandparents, we've had 3. We've had terrorist attacks, 2. One was Oklahoma City, one was New York, well, not to mention Washington the same day, and then we've had a pandemic. Did you have all that on your bingo card? Because I did not. And so how could I, and then the technology change, of course, I knew that was coming. That I was prepared for that. My parents were prepared for that. But who could have thought of all the things that were going to disrupt our ability to do business during my lifetime? It's
Mm.
unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. I I recently engaged on Threads. I created an account on Threads when it first came out, and I was like, "Oh, I don't really like this." But then I had a couple of people say, "I get a lot of really positive interactions on Threads," and I'm like, "Well, I'm not getting any positive interactions anywhere else. Let me see what's up." So I log into Threads, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is the perfect social media platform for me." Anyway, someone on Threads that's a complete tangent. But someone on Threads posted, "Well, how do you people who grew up in the '80s and '90s get through what's going on now in the world?" And I posted, I replied, "Well, my parents had the Vietnam War. My grandparents had World War II. My mother's ancestral home was bombed and her father was murdered. My, great-great parents, they had the Spanish flu pandemic, and their parents, they immigrated to California from Italy so they could take advantage of the silver and the gold rush. You know, this too shall pass."
It does, and change is inevitable and things continue to, I guess, progress, but it does seem like we've had just a little bit more than most generations, but it's been different.
Mhm.
Some of those, talking about your parents and your grandparents, some of that had some similarity, but then I feel like that we've just kinda, gone off into a
Oh,
weird, weird
yeah.
way.
I mean, yeah, well, I think a lot of it is that we are so that instant things can happen in China, and we know about them 3 seconds later. We're just so engaged, and back then, 100 years ago, it might take 3 weeks to learn about something that happened somewhere, so
3
we're
weeks 3 weeks and people would check their facts.
yeah, and
Like,
people would check
there
their
would
facts.
be retractions and there would be, "Oh, wait, we need to, revise that
Mm.
article before we send it out tomorrow."
Wouldn't it be nice if people retracted what they didn't get right today? Wouldn't that be nice? Instead of
Yes, because as a
perpetuating.
business owner, we have to. I mean,
Mhm,
when we make mistakes, we have to own up to it, we have to be truthful about it, and we have to make it right. And
mhm.
so I don't understand why, if this is what we have to do as business owners and business operators, this isn't a more widespread thing, but that might be another podcast.
Yeah, let's talk about that, the responsibility of the business owner and living up, when we make a mistake, what we need to do to fix it. What's some tips that you have for that?
Well, first and foremost, don't sidestep it. I can't say that harshly enough. If there is a misstep in your business, you step up, you own it. If there is a way to remedy. So in my business, I have now 15 associates that work under my organization. And so I don't shoot every job anymore. I'm watching the quality control. I'm doing a lot of the editing within my house of editing so that I can see all that. But still, from time to time, let's just say somebody gets sick and a photographer doesn't show up to an event they're supposed to. Thank goodness that hasn't happened yet. I would refund their money immediately. because that's our mistake. They should not have to pay for that. I would also probably write a note apologizing, a handwritten note. We write them for every client after every job to thank them. This would be one where I would apologize in writing along with giving them a refund. You have to find ways within your business that it is appropriate to make them whole. And the minute you don't, I just got a job this week. It's a conference that's coming in town at the end of the month. Their photographer bailed on them 3 weeks before the event.
Mm,
She's panicking. She's a nonprofit. She has nobody to cover her 4-day conference. And now not only is she on a time crunch, but she's on a budget crunch. And that is what makes photographers look bad
yeah.
because photographers are known for not being great business people. And that's where I feel like that I've done my best to separate myself, but I feel like every business owner has to do that.
And photography is a very competitive industry. There are so many people who have a digital camera who say, "Oh, I can be a photographer." Anyway.
Well, and that will come down to, an article that I'm looking forward to writing soon. What's the actual cost of photography? So if you hire somebody, you're on a budget, and they lowball you, and they get the job, and then they cancel 3 weeks before the event, is that really the price you should have paid for that photography? So I think that as your business owners are listening to this, are you selling yourself for the things that you do better than your competition? Because there's a photographer and then there's a business of photography, and that's completely different.
I love having a big dream, but you have to have a plan to get there, and in order to get there, the plan has to have the system. So that I mean, there's just everything always comes down to systems.
And as a business owner, patience,
Mm,
because I know we all want to get rich quick. Dear Lord, I would have loved that. It would have been fabulous. But most of the time, a business's success is slow and steady wins the race.
mhm, yeah,
Most of the time, not always, but most of the time, as you're building that reputation, you're building that client base, you're fulfilling people's expectations, and they're turning around and telling people they know, hey, you can count on this person.
and
That's worth all the money in the world.
saying no is not taking jobs that you know aren't gonna be a good fit. You don't have to take every job,
No, you
you
do
know?
not have to take care. And I would say that I wished I would have learned that lesson earlier, much earlier.
So before we started recording, you were telling me about that you did restaurant photography. And I always find restaurant photography to be interesting because it's an art form. Taking photographs of food is an art form, but you also have to encompass, the space. You have to portray the space. You want it to be warm and welcoming, but you also don't want it to look like it doesn't really look that way, right?
Well, and that's so much has changed in food photography because of Doordash and Uber Eats.
Mm,
So if you'll look as you go to your restaurants, the local ones particularly, you will notice that that quality of photography has declined tremendously because DoorDash will send in a photographer for about $75. They'll shoot about 300 images and the quality is subpar.
yeah.
But restaurants that are national chains, those type of restaurants embrace all of those things that you were talking about because they know that they're held to a standard by the Truth in Advertising Act that you really can't show food that's not your food without a risk of getting caught for that. So there's such a disparity now where it didn't used to be there because of the food delivery systems.
I didn't realize that DoorDash sent in photographers.
They do.
How interesting. I guess I never use DoorDash. I live in an area where I could just go where I need to go. I don't, I could walk to my favorite hamburger joint. And the other thing is when you go to some restaurants, you order based on the photo on the menu. I mean, we're
Correct.
talking about certain restaurants, not certain types of restaurants you order based on the photo and it's so disappointing when what you receive doesn't match the photo.
It is disappointing, yes.
So do you enjoy the work?
I do. I enjoy the work a lot. There's a lot of it that as I've aged, I'm growing tired of. I'm not gonna, say otherwise, but I still get excited every day, especially when I'm doing, like I told you, some of the more difficult and challenging work that really requires my years of expertise. And I'm also learning that I'm no longer the primary producer in this business. And so I can put work that I really don't enjoy as much anymore onto some of my other photographers and get it just to what I like to do. And that goes for even running the business. So I'm a weird photographer. I love the accounting and the bookkeeping, where I'm not so great at loving the sales and networking aspect of it. And so I'm hiring contractors to go do the selling and the networking on my behalf so that I could cut back on some of those things that just don't excite me, like the photography and the bookkeeping and the business processes do.
I don't think I have ever met a photographer who hired somebody to do their networking for them.
Have you ever met a photographer who networks?
Yes.
Have you? Oh, good to
Yes.
know because
Yes.
in Indiana, I do not run into a lot of photographers at networking events.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But yes, I
So
did it my whole career.
so I wanna talk about the 1099 process because you have a team, that works with you, but they aren't your employees, they are 1099 contractors, and so you have to deal with the logistics of that differently, and also, they're self-employed.
Yes. So this was a long time in the making. So I had one W 2 employee plus myself for the majority of my career. And if you are running a business right now and you are the person who is providing income full time for another human being, it is extremely stressful. And I see you and I hear you because I did it for the majority of my career. And that person became unexpectedly ill, died of breast cancer within 26 days of being diagnosed because she failed to take care of herself. And there I was after 25, 30 years of being in business with the same person, and I was left on my own. I was very fortunate. My daughter came into the business. She goes, I'll give you 2 years of my life to help you get this straightened out. And she was the one that helped me come up with processes and procedures for my 1099s. So that I think that that's one of the things that when people bring in these contractors, they don't hold them to the same standards that you might hold a W 2 employee to, where we do. We set up, here's what you're going to wear, here's what you can and can't say. And, we make sure that they are at a standard level and we pay them accordingly. So I think that sometimes when you're hiring 1099 employees, people are paying them such a low rate that they go find better offers or they're unreliable because they are, working for themselves. Where I do my best to make sure that they are paid a good wage, that they are treated well. And then I also make sure that they only do what they want to do. So I don't send out somebody to shoot an event that doesn't want to shoot events. I only send them out to do, oh, I only want to shoot headshots. Okay. And then I've got another person over here, don't ever send me out to shoot headshots. And so I don't send them out for that. So that's why my team has gotten so big, is because they don't do everything. They might not work for me for a month at a time because I don't have that kind of work for them, but they're out working for themselves. So that's how we came to this point today. And so far, so good. I've only been doing it about 4 years like this. And it has taken a ton of pressure off me to know that if we don't have work, I don't have to pay them.
Yeah, well, the difference between a W-2 employee and a 1099 contractor is that the contractor can say, "No, I don't wanna do that."
Correct.
Yeah, and which is for the photographer who is working with you, alongside you, that is nice flexibility for them,
It
and it
is one.
gives you a menu,
It does,
"This
and
is
now
here's
we've
my
got
me."
we got videographers, and I've got drone operators, and I've got all these people that I then manage, and I make sure they follow my process and that we deliver in the manner that I prefer, so it works out really well.
I'm not in the photography world, so it'd been a while since I'd seen a drone, but I was at an event over the weekend, and I heard this bzz, 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 and I went, That must be a drone," and I look up, and it's literally, like, this big,
Yes,
photographing the crowd. They've gotten so small. So
they
you
have gotten really small, very maneuverable.
but I mean, I could still hear it, so it would I wouldn't want to have one at my wedding. But it's kind of fun to capture, over the view from above in a way that's non-obtrusive. I mean, back in the day, they would have had to been on a what are those called? The things that go up
A
and down?
lift.
A lift,
Yeah, a
yeah,
lift.
and
Yeah.
there would have been a person up there with a big camera, but now it's just this little tiny, you know, 3-inch little drone.
Yeah, but I
So
will say that you're right. It can be distracting, and it's kinda like AI. it doesn't just because you have a drone doesn't mean you should use it, and just because you know how to use AI doesn't mean you should. So I
Mhm.
think that, people just need to be, "Oh, isn't a drone cool?" "Yes, but is it appropriate to your event?" Is that really what you wanna do?
I opened up an email this morning from somebody who I respect and admire, and I got about 3 paragraphs into the email because it was an interesting subject that I wanted to know more about, and I went, "Oh, AI wrote this." I just knew, knew within the 3rd paragraph. I should have seen the clues further up, but, you know, what really struck me, what took my breath away, AI says that, we don't.
Yeah, and I think that especially in marketing and advertising, we are trying to tell our clients to trust us
Mhm,
and to believe us. And if you read something or you see a photograph or something and you're like, that's just not right, it may not bother you that it's artificially created, but in the back of your mind, like, what else is not genuine? So I
mhm.
think that we have to all be very mindful that as we're marketing our business, what are we really telling our clients?
I don't know how much you wanna share tips for amateur photographers, but for the average solopreneur who wants to take a good picture, can you offer, like, some advice to get a better picture out of their cell phone? Just y
There's a couple of things I can tell you right off the bat. Everybody thinks you should have the windows to the back of your subject, and some of the worst pictures I've ever seen are because that's what people do. It is the exact opposite. So if you want to have a good photograph, you have to have the window in front of your subject, not behind them. So that gets the light on their faces, and that gives you a really, uh softer lighting that you don't have to edit to try to brighten it up. Sometimes you can control it, sometimes you can't. So that's the first kind of like
that right
tip.
there, that light right there is my window. Unfortunately, on days where it's overcast or if it's later in the day, I don't get that light. So, when you're relying on your window light, sometimes it doesn't work out.
Well, sometimes. My second tip that I can do is so many people now will hold their phones at their chest while they're taking someone's picture. They'll go from this level and they are shooting directly up your nose. And they're also you have to dip your chin, and I'm a woman of an age where I should not have my chin lowered at all. So, the most optimum angle for a person's face is actually above the person, slightly higher than eye level. So, those are my 2 quick tips for today.
I knew that tip, and I was at an event, and I asked someone to take a photo of my daughter and I. No, no, first they asked me to take their photo, right? And so I did it, camera up here, took 3 shots from 3 different angles, and I said, "You always take the photo from up above so that you don't have the double chin." I said that out loud to these women. And so then I hand my camera to one of the women to take a photo of me, and she took it from down here. After I had just explained, "You wanna take it from up here?"
Most people do. It's unbelievable.
It's like, "I just explained to you to take it from up here. Did you not hear me?" So anyway, the photos of my daughter and I from that event suck.
Right. Right.
That is excellent advice, and I hope everybody heard that. Take your photos from slightly up above your head level.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Like, are there any functions on a phone that might make the photo turn out just a little bit
Honestly, I
better?
have no clue. I don't use my phone for anything but taking pictures of my grandbabies. And if I gotta catch them before I can get them.
It's so funny. I know that a lot of us solopreneurs hiring a photographer to take pictures of our food or whatnot is just a little bit out of our price range, but when we're ready, how do we know we're hiring the right photographer?
Boy, that is a great question. It is not a terrible thing to say to a photographer, "Could I have references?" So even though you're looking at their website, they may have some Google reviews. So the first thing I would say is whether you're hiring a wedding photographer or a corporate photographer, you want to talk to somebody that they've worked for in the last 12 months. Preferably, if you're going with a commercial photographer, somebody that's photographed the kind of work you're doing. So, like I do a lot of architectural work. I could give you half a dozen architectural firms or construction companies that could vouch for me that I am who I say I am. I think people feel awkward asking for a reference like that, there is nothing wrong with that at all. So that's the first thing. Obviously, you've got a portfolio. It's also not bad to ask them, "Can I see your photograph?" Pick one before it was edited, because people, they don't understand that when somebody puts it on their website, they may have hired a professional editor to change that where that's not what they delivered to the client. So you want to see what it was like beforehand, and is that editing included in the price? Many photographers release their files unedited, but then what's on their website is fully edited. So you want to make sure of those two things for sure. And do not hire a wedding photographer to shoot corporate work, and don't hire a corporate photographer to shoot wedding work. Very few people can do the crossover. My dad used to say, if you're good at everything, you're good at nothing.
So when I was first diagnosed with cancer, I went to a photo shoot just for cancer patients where the professional photographer came in. There was a makeup artist, a hairstylist, yada, yada, yada. Did the whole glam thing. And the photographer would not give me the photo unedited. And I was like, this photo is perfect. You don't need to do anything to it. I love it just the way it is. Please don't edit it. And he wouldn't give it to me.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was like, I don't want to be I do not want to be airbrushed. I want to look the way I look. It was so, yeah. And it gave me like this, I would never refer anybody to you kind of feeling.
Well, and I can tell you, Candace, right now, that is becoming more and more popular. That because of AI, people want to be seen as genuine. And so that backing off of the editing. Now, I will still edit because I want to control the shadows and the color and all that stuff. But I have many corporate clients that are now asking us to keep the editing to a minimum. So that's the other thing. Make sure your photographer can handle your job the way you want it handled. You are the customer, so you
Yeah.
should get the images the way you want them.
Your corporate headshot doesn't need to be a glamour shot.
It should not, actually should not be, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion.
Okay. So now let's talk about, as the service provider, how do you have the conversation with your client to ask them, hey, would you mind being a reference for me? How does that conversation go down?
Normally, I am picking my reference based on who the client is. So I don't have people that are just standing and waiting that I've gotten them pre-approved. I will go and I will say, okay, I'm shooting a hospital. I'm trying to get a hospital job. Here's a hospital I've shot for. I will email them and I will say, would you be comfortable with this? If not, just say, and I make sure that there's an easy out. Just reply to this, no. Never had anybody turn me down yet. So those emails are not hard for me. They're short, they're to the point. I tell them who the client is, I tell them who the contact is so that they can have the idea to say no. I've never had anybody turn me down yet.
I love that framework. Short, specific, easy to opt out of.
Easy to
That
opt out.
that works for any time you're asking somebody for something.
Correct. Correct. And no, everybody needs to understand this in business. No is not a dirty word.
Mm-mm.
And if a client says no, that doesn't mean they don't like you. It may be they just don't have time to deal with you. So,
Yeah.
and I also will normally pick clients. I'm very fortunate. I don't have anybody unhappy with me, because if I do something wrong, I go and make it right and normally reshoot it at no charge to make it right. But I always pick clients that have been with me for a long period of time so that I'm very comfortable asking that. I wouldn't pick a client that I've only shot with once. I would always pick somebody that's been with me for at least a year or two.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that we haven't covered yet?
No, I mean, I feel like that if you've been in business for a long time, and since gratitude is what this is all about, the easiest way to show your gratitude is to try to help either the next generation, your clients, or your networking group so that they succeed. There's nothing that makes me happier than to help other people succeed or be the light in somebody else's dark place, because I had people that were the light for me. And so that's really, when I saw the title of the podcast, I've now done almost 50 podcasts. It really is about how, when I leave this earth, I want people to think she helped me.
Mm. That's my goal too. I want to leave the legacy of, because of Kandas, this happened for me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I live that every day. I try to make that happen every day, to do something nice for somebody every day, even if it's a small gesture. So if someone is facing the reality that they are about to inherit their parents' business, but the way their parents ran it isn't the way that they wanna run it themselves, what's your advice?
First and foremost, be very specific as you are transitioning. If this is something that you want and your parents want, make sure you lay down the ground rules, set the boundaries in advance. Because when I came into the business, like I said, I wasn't the first choice. They weren't even sure that I was going to make it in the business. And I had lots of ideas, but they didn't really, they were still at the height of their career when I came into it. And so the only reason that I got to take over the business at all was because my stepfather, who was the primary shooter for the business, got taken out with a stroke.
Mhm,
And so make sure that if you're coming into your family business, that there is an opening for the ideas. You may even bring in a consultant to help with the transition. There are plenty of people out there that can help you do this. Do the research. There's so much out there now compared to when I took over my family business. You can see what your competitors are doing. And you really, as the next generation, you should be doing a strict analysis of how your parents are running this business compared to how their competitors are running their business. And if they're doing it well and they're doing it right, you might ought to listen to them. If there's something that needs to be done differently and they've refused to change, which is a lot of times what happens in a family-run business, then you need to have that tough conversation. Say, "I'll come into your business, I'll take it over, but we need to make some changes, and we need to be on the same page about some of those changes in advance before I get into this," because it can be extremely stressful. It was extremely stressful.
mhm. Did your stepfather have a legacy plan in place?
No. There was no legacy plan in place, and he really expected that he was gonna die on the studio floor. He a passion like no other photographer I've ever known, and he never had any intention of not being a part of that business.
What's your advice there, if that happens to you? I mean, because that's a huge piece of the story, and you sort of just glossed over it.
Well, we don't wanna be dramatic about things, but, if your parents don't have a legacy plan, you need to really think twice about coming into it.
Mhm,
That might be an opportunity where if you want to buy the business outright, get your parents out of the business and then take it over, that maybe a purchase may be a better transition. So a clean break between generations rather than a transition through a slow purchase. I just think you've just gotta be super careful because and there are people that will help you. I've got a gentleman, a financial planner, that's all he does is come into generational businesses and help with that transition. So, I would think long and hard before you take over a family business that does not have a transition plan. I was so young and, so gung ho, it never crossed my mind how hard could it be if your parents do it?
alright, so if you're listening and you're like, "Oh my gosh, my parents don't have a legacy plan," I interviewed Adam Zuckerman, a couple years ago that I'll link to it in the show notes, and that episode really does go through the steps of succession planning for a business, so I highly recommend that would be your next listen. Again, it'll be linked below. Alright, Leslie Lane, this is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
Oh, that's tough because there's so many. So, first and foremost, my mother, as I said, bootstrapper is my mother. Second of all, my second husband. He's changed my life. Been together for 12 years, and he has definitely made me see that life and marriage and home can be good. Lastly, my grandbabies. The energy that a 2 and a 4-year-old can bring into your life, I highly recommend, and they make sure that I keep things on what really matters. That, yes, my business is important, and yes, I wanna be successful, and yes, I need to plan for my retirement, but I want them to know and love me so that when I'm gone, those memories of their BAM are some of the strongest memories that they have. So have people in your life that'll not only pick you up, sustain you, but keep your focus on the things that matter. And those are my 3 gratitude people.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for Gen X women solopreneurs who weave gratitude into their business strategy. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. I've been your host, Kandas Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.